Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, my good people out there in YouTube land. Welcome to Stir Crazy. This is episode, I know y'all going to wonder one of these days, I am going to know what number show it is. Today is not that day though. It is episode number 94. Today's show title is The White House Coronavirus Cluster is a mother, y'all. Trump is single-handedly infecting the entire District of Columbia, starting from the White House and working in concentric circles on outward. It is a mess. Did you see your boy the other night standing up on that balcony? I think Joy Reid from MSNBC called it his Mussolini moment, and seldom do I agree with Joanne Reid, but that is a moment I think we can agree on. Trump looking every bit of the fascist strongman and just straight up dickhead, taking off his mask and then going inside the White House so people have to engage with him, clearly, as he is the president of the United States. We're going to talk with UNBC Associate Professor Zoe McLaren. She studies health policy, and she's been studying how coronavirus, COVID-19 spreads. And might I mention, by the way, that in Washington, D.C., they are seeing their biggest one-day jump in COVID cases in literally weeks. I think since June, the district has not seen such a spike in COVID cases. Now, they are not attributing it directly to the White House cluster, but I think we can safely assume that at least a dozen of these new infections can be traced back to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to have that discussion a little bit later on in the show. We're also going to be speaking with one of the graduate students from the University of Michigan. Their union has gone on strike. They are protesting unsafe working conditions for the graduate students. Also, they are demanding that the University of Michigan divest from the Ann Arbor police, along with a myriad of other demands. I think that's what some of these grad students, not just at UMich, but really across the country, are doing some phenomenal things for workers' rights. We're going to talk with him. That is Amir Fleischman, who's going to be joining us. But before we get started, we kind of got to do a little bit of a roundup of what in the hell the police have been doing low these past several days. And we're going to start off in Wolf City, Texas. If you have not heard the story about Jonathan Price, it is a name you need to be familiar with. Now, the news cycle has been mostly drowned out for Trump bullshit, right? But what happened to Jonathan Price was very stunning, very striking. Another unarmed Black person shot dead by police. And we're going to pick the story up. I believe Good Morning America did a pretty interesting segment about it. So let's take a look at that.
Well, George, good morning. That arrest came just hours after people took to the streets of this small Texas town. You can see the memorial here. Jonathan Price, an admired member of this community, shot and killed at this convenience store.
This morning, Wolf City police officer Sean David Lucas charged with murder in the death of Jonathan Price.
Oh, Lord, answer my son. Oh, my baby.
Price, a 31-year-old city employee, was killed in this convenience store parking lot after witnesses say he was trying to defuse a heated argument between a couple inside the store.
3 gunshots went off, and I turned and looked at them, and I said, a cop just shot somebody.
According to the Texas Rangers, which is handling the investigation, when Officer Lucas arrived, Price walked away in, quote, a non-threatening posture. The Rangers say Lucas then tasered Price before shooting and killing him. Adding, the preliminary investigation indicates the actions of Officer Lucas were not objectively reasonable. Price was a beloved pillar of the community who worked with and coached children and had a personal training business. Overnight, more than 100 people showing up to honor Jonathan's life outside the gas station where he was killed, locking hands and wearing masks.
Black people aren't making it up. We're not playing a race card. There is a problem.
Bail was set at $1 million, but this morning there's still so much we don't know about what happened at this convenience store. But police making that arrest, Michael, and that is exactly what the family demanded.
That video from Good Morning America, you know, I'm not too keen on the framing there from the reporter on his sign-off saying there's still a lot that we don't know what happened at this convenience store. Well, what has been recounted by witnesses, and clearly at least the police and or prosecutors felt as if there was enough evidence to charge this officer in the death of Jonathan Price. But what we do know was Jonathan Price was unarmed. We do know Jonathan Price had nothing to do with the domestic violence situation that was happening at the convenience store. And he tried to make it known to the cops upon their arrival, hands up, don't shoot, right? Like he was letting them know that he was not threatening, he was not advancing towards them. And yet this officer took his life right there on the spot. So it's a good thing, I suppose, that charges have been brought, but we know that charges don't necessarily yield justice. And there's still a lot to be revealed, at least with some of these higher profile cases. First of all, we know not much is happening on the Breonna Taylor case front, with the Attorney General in Kentucky refusing to bring charges in connection with her death specifically. And it still remains to be seen whether or not Derek Chauvin and company up in Minneapolis are going to actually face any time for the murder of George Floyd. So the police seem undeterred by the movements and protests and uprisings that have been taking place nationwide across this country pretty much the entire summer. They're still killing unarmed Black people at will. And another thing that police are doing that we are reporting here on The Real News in a different form. I have a story coming out in a couple of weeks, well, hopefully sooner than that, with Mr. Thursday, Andrew Corkery, our visuals and research producer here at The Real News, but talking about the different ways in which law enforcement and the state are targeting known activists, known protesters, people who are engaging in perfectly legal and constitutional activities. They're targeting them for bullshit charges, for harassment, and for other things. I want us to take a look at some of the videos shot by citizen journalist Chuck Modiano. You know, Chuck has been in the streets literally all summer in DC, covering the protests, covering the police brutality, the tear gassing of protesters, the way that some federal police officers showed up on the streets of DC, not wearing any badges, not wearing any identification, the way that the National Guard and other members of the military swooped down on protesters in Northwest DC like they were insurgents in Fallujah. Just deplorable actions all around happening in the nation's capital in response to the uprisings and movements going on down there. But over the weekend, according to Chuck Modiano and according to others who have been on the ground, DC Park Police, which is a federal branch of the Metropolitan Police, there's a lot of police in Washington, DC, y'all, let me tell you. They have been showing up at the homes of known activists and known organizers of mutual aid organizations, claiming to have warrants and trying to basically bum rush and intimidate people. I want us to check out a couple of videos Chuck Modiano shot over the last couple of 24 hours, actually. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, huh? You keep it safe. Or you can stay here and make a minute all day too. Leave, get the fuck out of here. Leave. Who keep us safe? We keep us safe. Who keep us safe? We keep us safe. Who keep us safe? We keep us safe.
You are not allowed to come into my home. You are not allowed to come into my home. You are not allowed to come into my home. Nicole does not live in this house.
Police officers, one plainclothes and one in park police uniform, that were kind of milling around in the front yard, and then they moved out to the sidewalk. And so I came up and started recording. Gradually more people showed up. Another plainclothes officer showed up, and just the crowd grabbed it, like grew and grew. And eventually they said that they had an arrest warrant, but not a search warrant, so they couldn't enter the property. They said that they found or saw somebody who used to live here, and they had an arrest warrant for that person. She has not lived here for at least a year. And so, yeah, they came back.
Did they give any more information as if they might come back, or was there any other information that you ascertained?
They did say, go in and get her. They thought they saw somebody who looked like her, so I think it was just a case of mistaken identity. And then we could just leave. And but they said, you're making this difficult the hard way, so we can go get a search warrant, and then we'll come kick in the door.
They said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was Chuck Modiano interviewing the neighbor of one of the activists that police showed up at their house, as the neighbor recounted that the police had an arrest warrant allegedly for this individual, but not a search warrant. They were attempting to enter the home, and yet people showed up and was like, no, where's your papers? We need receipts, officers. You ain't got your proper receipts. Get the fuck out of here. Shout out to all the folks, basically, by the way, that said that who protects us, we protect us. And we have been doing a lot of research into how cops and the state apparatus at large have been targeting protesters, not only with laws, as is the case in Tennessee. I'm sure anyone in Tennessee is aware of this. Your Republican Governor Bill Lee, along with the GOP controlled state legislature, passed a law at the end of the summer, an anti-camping law aimed at protesters who were sleeping out on the grounds of the state capitol in response to the movement for Black Lives, trying to get a sit-down meeting with the governor. Now, such activities is deemed a felony. And in the state of Tennessee, if you are convicted of a felony, you lose your right to vote. That is a targeted law. As we just saw in DC, cops coming to activists' homes, trying to look for them, intimidate them with bullshit warrants. Also, in Florida, we spoke with an activist. Again, this is coming up on our piece coming shortly. Activist Sadie Dean from down in Tampa, where police showed up at her house, tactical unit, 9 officers in Kevlar. She's a young woman by herself. They drag her out of the house, not completely dressed. They charge her with kidnapping in connection to a very minor altercation that happened at a conflicting day of protest between Black Lives Matter and Back the Blues Support Tampa Police protests there. And they had the opportunity to have Miss Dean surrender herself, but they chose to come to her house armed and drag her out in front of all of her neighbors. So we are seeing across the country all the ways in which police are, quote unquote, fighting back against protesters. When the police are the ones with all the power, the protesters are not the ones with the power at this moment. But I wanted to also get into how cops in small ways are being checked. Out in Los Angeles, we have talked about this here on the program before. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, right? Long suspected and proven, documented, reported upon to have internal cliques of deputies, gangs, right? I think cliques is being nice. Well, the LA County Inspector General released a report on Monday, which had clear evidence of the so-called Banditos gang of sheriff's deputies who have these special gang tattoos. They shoot unarmed citizens, allegedly, to gain entrance into this gang. And it's a very sobering piece to read in the Los Angeles Times. If you have not checked it out, I suggest that you do so. And it definitely names the LA County head sheriff, Alex Villanueva, as someone who is aware of this gang activity within his department. He has also allegedly protected officers against inquiry and against criminal charges in relation to this gang activity. And, the question is, guys, I mean, we want to vote, right? We're being screamed at by every aspect of the left-leaning Democratic political apparatus to go vote. How do you vote out gangs in the police department? These are the questions. Another thing I wanted to ask real quick, how do I block people? Oh, is it getting bad in there, Genevieve? Shout out to Genevieve Montanar. She's our producer. She is handling bouncing today in the chat. I don't know how you block people, Genevieve. Give them the finger. Can I give them the finger? If you give Genevieve problems, this one's for you. Hey, speaking of other ways in which police, small ways, by the way, police are being reined in, Richmond, Virginia, the prosecutor there has decided to charge 2 officers with assault and other charges. I want us to pick up those tweets, Dwayne. Let me read them joints, because this is kind of a big deal. So we saw a lot of chaos happening in Richmond, Virginia over the summer when the mayor instituted a curfew. We had protesters coming out to, Confederate Row, where they had Robert E. Lee, all them big statues and all that. Well, this is some breaking news reported by News 8's Alex Thorson. They report Richmond Commonwealth attorney says that she's pressing, hold on, let me move my thing out the way. This is in my way. She's presented 18 sealed indictments to today's grand jury, quote, concerning the actions of certain Richmond Police Department officers during the protests that occurred this summer. Next tweet. Because if you remember, we had shown lots of, oh, look at that. Well, that's helpful. I thought it was another tweet in there too, but this is part of the affidavit, or rather the indictment of charges coming from the Commonwealth Attorney, John Marshall Courts Building. Well, that's not the name of the Commonwealth Attorney. That's the name of the building. But this is what they intend to do. So they are presenting 18 sealed indictments for the officers in relation to the incidents happening over the summer in Richmond. A couple of the officers being charged with assault. As we see here, Alex Thorson continues in their reporting. The grand jury finds the evidence that Richmond Police Department officers is sufficient, agrees to indict officers, indict them. Richmond's top prosecutor wanted to indict 8 officers total. There are 2 being indicted. Officer Christopher Brown, no relation to yours truly, being charged with assault and battery. Officer Mike Janowski also being charged with assault and battery. So now there has been a response, I believe, from the Richmond Fraternal Order of Police, whatever, their organization down there is called, basically saying, if officers have been violating of the law, then sure, prosecute them. So I think this is a good thing. These officers have not been fired. They have been removed from street duty. They have been placed on some sort of administrative detail in waiting for a trial and an inevitable verdict in being charged with assault. But this is the kind of thing that needs to happen. Like, prosecutors need to charge the violent cops, the ones that are just out here cracking people's skulls because they have the ability to. They need to get those guys up out of the paint before they shoot someone like Jonathan Price, someone like Jacob Blake, like someone like Breonna Taylor. Like, get these clowns out of here. If they have a propensity towards violence, towards unarmed people, to people who are not being violent towards them, it's very important that prosecutors take these steps and charge cops with assault and battery. But it also needs to go forward where cops who have assault convictions attached to them cannot just leave one police department and go work for another police department where they can also cause terror and violence on other communities. So it is a very, very, very good sign that some of these things are happening. I am curious, guys, real quick. First of all, do we have any comments from the comments? I do not see any comments from the comments, so we're going to keep this rolling. Is Amir ready, gang? Do we have Amir? Okie dokie. Well, we do not have Amir as of yet, but he is coming. So listen, y'all. Oh, we do. Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. I'm sorry. I did check my message, Dwayne. I didn't see anything about Amir up there. Is he on with us now? Wonderful. Well, gang, I told you earlier at the start of the show that some very, very bold labor actions have been taken by some graduate students, not only across the country, but very specifically at the University of Michigan. And today we are joined with Amir Fleischman. Amir is the secretary of the Graduate Employees Organization of the AFT chapter of Michigan, Local 3550, under the umbrella of the AFL-CIO, and he joins us today. I'm assuming from parts near Ann Arbor. Amir, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yep, I'm calling in from Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Can you hear me, Amir?
Yep.
Oh, okie dokie. Well, tell you what, can we lead off with that package Dwayne, while we're waiting for Amir to come on, just to give everybody a little bit of a okay, wonderful. Amir, can you hear me? Amir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Brilliant. How are you? Thank you so much for being here.
I am good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well, first of all, to give the audience a little bit of a background explainer, so to speak, of exactly the kind of actions that are happening on behalf of the Graduate Employees Union at the University of Michigan. Here's a piece back from September from WDIV, Click on Detroit, which I think did a decent job of giving a cursory outline of some of the grievances of the grad students at the University of Michigan. Let's take a look at that.
As clusters of COVID cases become a concern on college campuses across the country, the Graduate Employees Organization at U of M is taking a stand.
We're going to be on strike until our demands are met.
2,100 members of U of M's Graduate Employees Organization walked off the job last week, demanding better protections against COVID and anti-policing measures.
There's just an overwhelming sense that a lot of people, a lot of other students can't fight back. So we feel like as a union, it's our responsibility to take that on for the broader community.
Kate Castle is a second-year PhD student and a steward for the sociology department. The GEO wants U of M to increase COVID testing and have it randomized, make childcare subsidies available regardless of location or the child's age, and a universal remote work option.
The university is functioning like a business rather than a public institution. The way that they've responded to COVID is very much like valuing profit over human lives.
The GEO also wants to disarm campus police and cut their budget in half and cut ties completely with Ann Arbor police. RAs and U of M's dining staff have now joined the strike in solidarity. Neither are unionized. Lindsay Adams is a sophomore studying film and supports the movement.
I'm worried for my friends on campus, so of course I'm backing it 100%.
U of M did offer a proposal to the union's demands, but it was rejected.
I really wish there was some adequate communication happening that wasn't just blaming the GSIs. It really feels like to me that the administration is not owning up to any of it.
Our strike at U of M is leading the way and showing that we can fight back and we can change things.
I'm Priya Mann, Local 4.
The University of Michigan did send us a statement. It reads in part, "The agreement from our recent contract negotiations with GEO was a promise on the union's part that its members would not strike and leave their students without instruction. It was only when they went against that promise that the university took additional action," end quote.
That from WDIV, Click on Detroit. Amir, so that was about a month ago. Give us an update of what has happened with the labor strike from the Graduate Employees Union, and how has the university responded to your demands?
Yeah, so the strike ended a few weeks ago. It ended both because we got a better offer from the university and because they threatened us with a legal injunction that would have forced us back to work. In the offer that we got, we ended up getting some significant progress on childcare subsidies, which is an incredibly important issue, especially since all Ann Arbor public schools are online this semester. That's especially important for the gendered wage gap. We got some extra protection for international students, a grievance procedure that has a bit more teeth in it that would allow graduate students to file an unsafe work environment grievance with likelihood that it would result in that class going fully online, at least for the duration of the grievance procedure and possibly after. And we got some minimal commitments from the university on our policing issues. Really, we won like a task force and some other small things, but the really key thing that we got there was we actually forced the university to bargain with us, or at least to talk to us on these policing issues, which is really unprecedented. The university likes to act as if policing issues, having armed cops on our campus, is not a workplace safety issue, that these issues don't belong in labor negotiations. We force them to sort of implicitly admit that this is a labor issue, this is a workplace safety issue, and that they do have to talk to us about it when we're having these sort of negotiations.
I have loads of questions for you, Amir. I don't know whether or not to start with COVID or to start with the cops, but let's start with COVID, because University of Michigan was among a lot of big schools at the start of the semester that had a bit of a bungled response to reopening campus or not reopening campus to start the semester off. How has the university handled things in the subsequent weeks since the school year began, in your opinion? And what is the COVID situation at the University of Michigan?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of, I don't know. Disaster might be a little too strong, but it has not gone smoothly at all. Basically, the university is not doing asymptomatic testing or randomized testing. So they are only testing people who have symptoms. Right now, the university would not give a test to somebody if they were not showing symptoms, but had been in an in-person classroom with a COVID positive person. That would not constitute exposure for the university sufficient to warrant a test, which I think is ridiculous. We're seeing breakouts all over campus, in dorms. The residents advisors, the RAs, went on strike with us because conditions were so bad for them. I've had students in my own classes tell me that they are afraid to get a COVID test from the university because if that test comes back positive, they'll be put in quarantine housing where conditions are totally inadequate. Students don't have access to microwaves, sometimes don't have access to warm meals, laundry. So the university was totally unprepared to reopen, which is totally unacceptable given that they had the entire summer plus a month and a half, to prepare for this. They really let us down. They also made the decision in the middle of the summer not to go ahead with the football season, and then a few weeks ago announced that they were in fact going ahead with the football season. I think that really isn't surprising, given how little regard the university has shown towards the health and safety of their workers and students. Finally, I think it's just worth mentioning that all this is going on so in Michigan, the Board of Regents of the university, the people who hire and fire the president of the university, the top of the command chain, they're elected by a statewide vote. 7 out of 8 of these people are Democrats, and this is what is going on at this university. It is, I want to say that it's shocking, but I can't say that I'm surprised with this kind of behavior.
I mean, what are the conditions that you are being exposed to, you and your members, Amir, as you are giving instruction to undergrads? What's the scenario? What is the University of Michigan policy in terms of, I suppose, student to instructor ratio in a given classroom setting?
So the University of Michigan is doing a hybrid semester. So this means that the really big classes that are most often taught by, tenure track faculty with big salaries, those are all online. The smaller classes that, are usually taught by graduate students or lecturers with smaller salaries are a mix of in-person and online. The university does not have a universal policy on remote work, which means it's up to the individual departments whether a class with that smaller class size will be in-person or remote. So what this means is that there's a lot of uncertainty for graduate students and for lecturers and faculty about whether or not we'll be able to teach in person or online. So my department of political science has had a very good policy on this, and it's pretty much up to the individual instructor whether we're in person or online. So I'm teaching online this semester, thankfully. But it's not clear how long this is going to last. We're facing down another semester of coronavirus world, and the university still doesn't have a university-wide policy on this. So it's possible that next semester they decide, well, this online thing was fine for the fall, but it's not going to cut it for the winter. So now you're back in person. And that's part of why we were going on strike and demanding a universal remote option, which we were unfortunately not able to win.
I want to get back to the part of your demands as it related to the removal of the Ann Arbor Police Department from your campus. a lot of campuses have their own police in addition to, I guess, the town cops, as it were. Is that the case at the University of Michigan? And how is the relationship, I suppose, between the Ann Arbor police and the student body there on campus?
Yeah, so the University of Michigan does have its own campus police force called DPSS. So in addition to demanding that the University of Michigan cut ties with local law enforcement, such as the Ann Arbor PD and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, we were also demanding a 50% budget cut for DPSS, the campus cops. So I think it's worth noting that a large part, so first of all, the University of Michigan has not always had campus cops. This was something that came into effect in the 90s. And these campus cops were also not always armed. So we're really not asking for something unprecedented here. We're just asking to go back to how things were before. The University of Michigan is engaged in a program where they buy weapons from the American military to arm the campus cops. These weapons are never used and are incredibly expensive to maintain. So a lot of that 50% budget cut that we're asking for could come simply from getting rid of these weapons that are totally unnecessary for the kind of campus we have. You asked about the relationship between the local law enforcement and student population. There are two incidents that I think are worth mentioning here. So first is the 2014 police murder of Ora Rosser, who was an Ann Arbor resident, a mother of three, who was shot in her own home by Ann Arbor PD. The officer responsible for her death was subsequently promoted in the Ann Arbor PD, and the police chief at the time is currently the head of DPSS. I'll also add that 2 years ago, University of Michigan students, including many GEO members, occupied the Fleming Administration Building on our campus as part of a climate protest. The university president's response to this was to arrest many of these protesters, to call in the Ann Arbor PD to arrest his own students. It's for these kinds of reasons that we are against the university having a formal tie with the AAPD. And we think that the University of Michigan should follow other comparable institutions like the University of Minnesota in cutting ties with local law enforcement.
Interesting. Amir, you mentioned that you are a political science backgrounded person. So I have to get your opinion, if we could, about the election. Clearly, Michigan is a pivotal state for the 2020 general election, presidential election especially. And we know the huge role that Michigan played in 2016, where Donald Trump was able to eke out such a minimal victory in the state. I think it was less than 10,000 votes thereabouts that Trump was able to win the state. What is the voting situation looking like, first of all, in Michigan? We know, obviously, in communities of color, usually the lines are very long, dealing with a lot of voter machine issues, malfunctions, etc. Plus the closing of polling places in a lot of areas, and then obviously COVID factoring into all this as well. So I know that's a lot to throw at you. So let me just start from the beginning. How is voting looking in Michigan from your vantage point right now?
Yeah, so I'll just preface this by saying two things. So one, yes, I am a political scientist, but I do political theory, which is kind of like political philosophy. I study democratic theory, but it's a little far removed from the nitty gritty of American voting. I'll also add that I am not an American citizen. I'm Canadian. I am not allowed to vote here. So too. I only have a partial perspective. Yes.
We like Canadian Thanksgiving. It's coming up soon.
Oh yeah, so do I. Yeah, I'll say that I think it's been relatively okay in Michigan. I know that the the governor and the Secretary of State are both Democrats. We have mail-in voting. I know I've been receiving many futile letters to my address asking me to register to vote, even though I'm not allowed to. So I think it's okay. I do remember that during the Democratic primary here, there were, I was hearing from many people of hours and hours long voting lines. And I can tell you, as a Canadian, I voted in Canadian elections, I voted in UK elections. I have never had to wait in line at all to vote. That's kind of mind-boggling to me. It's just like you walk in, you walk out, it takes less than 10 minutes. So any system where you have an hour-long line, even a half-hour-long line, that is just clear voter suppression against working people who have to work in the middle of the day and do not have time to stand in line for 2 hours to cast a simple ballot, let alone participate in other ways. Another initiative that GEO is backing that some of our members are working on is pushing the University of Michigan to give students and workers the day off on election day so that they'll be able to vote and volunteer at polling stations and volunteer for get out the vote for their favorite candidate.
Well, that sounds inspiring. I hope you guys are able to achieve those goals. Well, going forward, I'm curious as to what your take is about the student labor movement looking ahead, right? Because I think, as you mentioned, the demands that you set forth to the college, to the university, didn't meet them all, but you actually got progress. I mean, more progress than had previously been made on these same issues in a very long time, if ever. In your opinion, I mean, what is the future of, graduate student instructors unionizing and continuing to unionize? In addition, we've seen even collegiate players, collegiate athletes band together and stand in solidarity when it comes to practice conditions, especially it pertains to COVID in the pandemic, making certain demands. Whether or not all of them were successful, I mean, they were being made, which is, again, we're seeing students and student athletes assert themselves in ways that we have not seen, perhaps in a couple of generations. So if we could look ahead, in your opinion, what is the future of this movement?
Yeah, so I'll say that for GEO specifically, we're sort of riding high on the aftermath of the strike. Our membership right now is the highest it's been since Right to Work was passed in Michigan, which was a devastating law for our union and for unions generally in the state and across the country. What I think our strike has shown is that having a strike that has radical demands, that stands up really for the safety of its members and for a more just workplace and community, is something that excites people and makes people want to join a union. When a union is only concerned with the so-called bread and butter issues, it is not really living up to the maximum of its potential. Our demands in this campaign were for the entire community. Having a robust testing policy on campus is not just for graduate students, because, I'm teaching online. I'm not going to campus every day. But if there's an outbreak in our community, it's going to affect me, it's going to affect my neighbors, it's going to affect everybody, and especially the most vulnerable community members. And it's the same with the university's policing policy. I expect that going forward, in future GEO campaigns, we're going to be focusing similarly on these important issues that go beyond our university, that challenge this idea of, what some might call the neoliberal university, though I hate using that overused word, where one that's more concerned with the size of its endowments than the quality of education it's providing or the basic health and well-being of its students. I think labor unions are going to start, including climate change-related demands in their contract campaigns, including racial justice demands in their contract campaigns, including greater workplace democracy demands in their contract campaigns. This is all critical because, unfortunately, we're not getting enough of this stuff from our politicians. Joe Biden wins, Donald Trump wins, we're not going to get the action we need on climate change. People need to do this for ourselves. We need to stand up and show that the workplace is a site of politics. It is a place where change can happen if we are strong enough to do it ourselves.
And Amir, I'll let you go after this question. Being a political scientist and, as you mentioned, a political theorist, your take on 2020, the United States, in terms of how our political system is looking. I'm pretty sure it's looking pretty crazy to everybody else around the world. Looking at our president, who is positive for a deadly virus and yet defiant in his refusal to wear a mask or do things to protect himself. But not only that, already saying preemptively that he will not accept the results of the election should he lose, and already casting aspersions of upon the process of mail-in voting and absentee voting as well. How would you qualify what the United States is at this moment as a political theorist, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I'm just going to say this is my own personal opinion, not the opinion of my organization at all. I think that it's important when thinking about this political moment to emphasize both how unprecedented it is and how totally business as usual it is. I think on the one hand, it terrifies me that Donald Trump could be, trying to steal the election through the courts and threatening violence in the streets against activists. But we have to remember that in 2000, the Republican Party used the courts to steal an election. This has happened before. We talk about Donald Trump's tenuous relationship with the truth, and that is frightening. But, we were told a lie that got us into a war in Iraq. My Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he builds pipelines and marches into climate marches. He also has a tenuous relationship with the truth. So we do need to fight Donald Trump. He is a fascist, and he represents a real threat to everybody in this country, indeed everybody in the entire world. But going back to politics as usual, going back to Obama and Biden, that is not sufficient. That is what got us to Trump. So we need to think beyond that. We need to think beyond elections, though we should participate in them. And we need to try to think of what a different society can look like. And I think that means a real change. And I'm both hopeful and frightened. So we'll see what happens.
I like that take there, Amir. We're going to have you back on to get some of your theories out there, because yes, it is past time for us to reimagine a different way, because you're right. Obama and Joe Biden way is still not going to cut it, and obviously Trump is absolutely the wrong direction. So we have to stand at that fork in the road and decide to go straight, because left and right is not going to get it for us. Listen, we've been speaking today with Amir Fleischman. Amir is the secretary of the Graduate Employees Union, AFT Michigan Local 3550, from underneath the umbrella organization of the AFL-CIO. He's been joining us today from Ann Arbor. Amir, we appreciate you making some time for us. It was fantastic speaking with you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey guys, and speaking of election, we are already underway in a good portion of the states. Early voting is already happening here in Maryland and in Virginia, in the DC area. Yeah, people are already lining up long lines, standing in long queues to make sure that they get their vote off. Dwayne, I want us to pop up that video if we could, from Ohio, because early voting is underway in Ohio. This video that we're about to see, I believe, was shot in Franklin County, and it already underscores, number one, the urgency of this election, but number two, the determination in which people are going to get out there and get these votes off. Do we see that video of the long lines? Look at that. Look at that. Yes, it's in high speed, but just to give you an indication, I mean, this line stretches for blocks and blocks and blocks of people lining up to vote. We are already seeing voter suppression underway in the state of Texas. The governor there, Greg Abbott, has mandated that only one drop-off box for ballots be allowed per county. We're talking about the state of Texas. This fool's talk about only one box per county to drop off mail-in ballots or, absentee ballots. Mind you, Harris County in Texas, which I believe is where Houston is located, 4 million people in the county. So imagine if only a fraction of those people are dropping off their ballots, and there's only one box there available to do so. So the Republicans are already very much deep in this. Operation Cheat, Operation Steal This Election 2020 is already underway. But as our previous guest, Amir, just pointed out, well, we've already seen elections be stolen by Republicans here in the U.S. as recently as 2000, as decided by the Supreme Court. So there's a lot going on there. I want us to look at some of the comments from the comments Shout out to Genevieve, girl. We know you in there doing your thing. Appreciate you. And shout out to Taylor Hebden for helping out. And James, of course. Lance Ross L says, the fall of America was predicted long ago, and I think it's happening right in front of our eyes. I do too. It's scary to be here while America is failing, but c'est la vie. La Serge says the issue is not police use of force, but excessive and unreasonable use. I mean, well, isn't that? Yeah, that's the problem. We've been. Hey, I hear myself come back to me. That's weird. Also in the comments, Observer says the latest issue of Labor Notes is excellent on this. I'm assuming he's talking about the graduate students organization, the graduate employee organization at the University of Michigan, and how the grad student labor union is taking off, labor movement, I should say. Also coming from the comments, guys, got lots of good ones coming in today. Guy Shaw says, thanks for letting us know it's in high speed, Kim. Well, you're welcome. I mean, I'm pretty sure you knew already. What else do we have here from the comments? LaSurge says, well-phrased question, great interview, well done, The Real News. Thank you very much. Listen, guys, we always appreciate y'all checking us out. Shout out to everyone that's in the chat, in the comments. Listen, as you can probably imagine, I don't have a clue what's happening in the comments until our wonderful staff gives me some screenshots and tells me. I can't read the comments live because I'd probably be responding to all the idiot racist trolls with a bunch of FUs in fuck you, buddy. And that would probably be my response to most of them. We got Zoe on. Wonderful, guys. Hold on. One more comment. I thought I had a new one, but I don't. No worries. Listen, guys. So as it has been reported by pretty much every news agency out there, and confirmed, of course, by the White House with varying degrees of transparency, Donald Trump has the COVID. Not only does he have the COVID, Melania has the COVID. Not only does Melania have the COVID, Kellyanne Conway got the COVID. Not only does Kellyanne Conway got the COVID, Chris Christie got the COVID. And Tom Tillis got the COVID. And Mike Lee has the COVID. In fact, that now infamous gathering at the White House Rose Garden where potential Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett was being introduced to a VIP, a who's who in Washington, D.C. of maskless people. A lot of people are calling it the slaughter at the Rose Garden because this COVID cluster seemingly continues to grow. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, Washington, D.C. is reporting its highest single day reported positive cases of COVID that it has seen highest since June, I believe. And here we are in October. Now, public health officials are not attributing this spike directly to the White House outbreak, but we can put two and two together, okay? But to kind of give us some context about what we could be potentially looking at here, forget that it's Trump. I'm talking about the actual number of people that could be affected by this very rapid spread of COVID-19 through this very particular demographic of Washingtonians could be pretty epic, and not epic in a good way. And today we're joined with Zoe McLaren. Zoe is an associate professor at the University of Maryland in Baltimore County. She specializes in public health policy, and she has been doing work in relation to tuberculosis and COVID, along with HIV. And she joins us today, I believe, from Baltimore County. Zoe, though you could be instructing from parts unknown, we appreciate you making some time for us today. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here, Kim.
I want us to get let's remove the politics from this at minimum, right? But the timeline and the developments surrounding the president coming down with COVID are of great importance. When it comes to someone who is starting to demonstrate COVID symptoms, how long has it been since that person initially became exposed to the virus? We're not getting a lot of information from the White House about when the president's last negative COVID test was. So if we can sort of operate from the information that is out there, when do you think or how long do you think that he had been exposed to the virus before he began to exhibit symptoms?
I think that's very hard to say, partly because we don't have a lot of information about the timeline from the White House. They've been reticent to release information. And also because the course of the virus differs with different people. That's part of why we have that 14-day quarantine period, is because people may develop symptoms within 4 or 5 days, or it might take quite a lot longer for them to develop symptoms, and they might be 9 days later. And so it's really hard for us to look with the information that we have and determine exactly when people were infected. But what we can tell is, based on the information we know about who was infected, when they were in contact with each other, and what the timeline of that is, that we know that people should be quarantining, even though, for example, Mike Pence is not planning on quarantining, but he appears to have had close contact with people who were infected or could have been infected during that Rose Garden ceremony and some of them indoor events surrounding that. And he would be recommended to have a 14-day quarantine period. So until October 10th, to be isolated from other people, to make sure that he doesn't spread the virus, because he could be infectious even before he develops symptoms.
Which, if you're Kamala Harris, you got to be a little concerned about that, because they are scheduled to debate, I believe, tomorrow night. And the senator from California has requested a plexiglass divider be placed on the stage, to which the response from Vice President Pence's office was a bit of a mocking thing. I'm a paraphrase here. You know, if Senator Harris wants to put herself in a bubble, so to speak, or some sort of, I think they use a different word, but she's free to do that. If you were Kamala Harris, how would you feel about sharing a stage with Mike Pence, knowing the close contact and recent close contact that he had with a now actively positive President Donald Trump?
So with anybody who was within the past 14 days in close contact with people who ended up having a positive COVID-19 diagnosis, we should be very concerned that those people could be infectious, even if they have no symptoms, even if they have a set of negative tests. And so anybody should be concerned about being in potentially close contact with those people. So on a debate stage, depending on how far away they are, the plexiglass divider would add some additional protection. But we know that the virus can spread through the air, and it's possible that the virus could spread even with the plexiglass divider. So I think we should be concerned about the risk of transmission, not just to Kamala Harris, but also to other people that may be present in the debate hall, the audience, the moderator. And I think that people who are unwilling to follow standard public health guidelines about quarantining are people who may be willing to put other people at risk and who may be hiding information. And so I think that we all want to be very careful to make sure that we protect ourselves from what is a deadly virus.
You know, there's so much information that we still don't know about COVID-19, but some information that we have been able to learn over these past several months. And some of the information has been corrected. For example, initially, the 6-foot guideline for social distancing is something that people pretty much accepted as the standard, but additional research proves that the virus can actually be spread from a distance of between 7 and 13 feet. We also know that the water droplets, if someone should sneeze or cough or speak loudly, the droplets that the virus can hang out on can linger in the air for up to 5 minutes, which is, to me, just mind-boggling amount of time for a virus to be able to survive there. And, you know, so in lieu of those facts, Dwayne, let's go to that video of Trump arriving back home from Walter Reed Hospital to the White House and standing up on the White House balcony. Let's take a look at that if we could.
Maybe come back there.
Now, Professor, I mean, knowing what you know about COVID, knowing what we all know about COVID, to see the president stand there, giving the Fonzie thumbs up, and then take off his mask and walk in the White House, and we see a cadre of people standing there waiting to greet him and speak with him. The fact that we know, and he knows, more importantly, that he has COVID and decided to take off his mask and then go inside and interact with others. I'm curious as to, you know, as a health person, what was your initial reaction when you saw that? And what message do you think that sent to everyone that was watching?
I think the public health messaging around wearing masks and indoors versus outdoors has been very clear for a number of months. And so most Americans know that you want to wear a mask indoors and that you want to avoid other people if you may be contagious. So the president has been diagnosed with COVID-19. It is very likely that he is still contagious and other people around him could be put at risk. So my concern is for the staff in the White House, and many of the staff live in DC. And so we're quite concerned about the potential that the outbreak within the White House may actually spread further in the city as well.
And lastly, Donald Trump is again deciding to receive treatment back at the White House, obviously having a level of health care that the average American does not have access to, certainly not the average person who comes down with COVID, not necessarily going to receive state-of-the-art or experimental treatments to treat COVID. The president is obviously a very special case. But when Donald Trump says, and again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot to bash Trump. It's just, we're just kind of reacting to the insane stuff that he has said himself, which is very contradictory to a lot of the own health professionals in his own organization, in his own administration, rather. But when the president of the United States says that COVID is not unlike the flu, something that he posted on his social media, Dwayne, if you could put up the Facebook thing, that Facebook actually took down his post about COVID being similar to the flu, and Twitter put up a banner around his tweet flagging it as misinformation, that other entities like social media are having to correct the president of the United States for giving out literally health compromising information surrounding this global pandemic, surrounding this virus. And then to know that he is intending on continuing to debate Joe Biden next week. I was sort of astounded by this, and obviously this could change by next week, but he intends to be present at the second presidential debate with Joe Biden. What is your take on that? As a medical professional, it seems quite obvious that Trump probably should not be traveling and not be exposing himself to others. But if he seems intent to do so, how can others, I suppose, protect themselves from him?
So first of all, to address the question of the flu, we know that COVID-19 is much more deadly than the flu. The vast majority of experts are in agreement on that, and the data back that up. So we need to be very clear that it is more deadly, COVID is more deadly, and we want to correct that misinformation wherever we see it. President Trump is planning on continuing with his regular debate schedule. There are a lot of questions about the course of his illness. So he is not out of the woods yet. We know with COVID-19 that it may take weeks for the worst to develop, that we should be very concerned about that. And there's an awful lot of uncertainty. So he may say that he thinks he'll be well enough to travel in a week. But at the moment, from the best medical understanding, there are no guarantees on that. In terms of whether he's traveling, he's likely next week potentially to still be contagious. And people around him should be concerned about contracting the virus. It's not clear. So what we can do, we can avoid people who we think are contagious. We can wear our masks. We can encourage others to wear their masks. We can encourage people to get tested as well. But we need to protect our own health.
Yep. I don't disagree with that. We've been speaking today with Professor Zoe McLaren. She is an associate professor at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's The Retriever. yours. We appreciate you making some time for us, Professor. Thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kim.
All righty. Hey guys, that's it. That's it for Stir Crazy Tuesday. It's been a show. I'd like to thank everybody that works on the show because it does take a community effort. Thank you to Dwayne Gladden. Thank you to Taylor Hebden, James Daly, Adam Coley, Genevieve Montanard, new to the crew and new to bouncing those YouTube comments. I'm sure that was fun, Genevieve. I'm sure you had a blast. Hey gang, come join us this Thursday for another episode of Stir Crazy. We look forward to hearing from you. Also, it's the last one. Holy shit. Did y'all know that? No, y'all didn't know that because I didn't tell y'all that. Y'all, Stir Crazy is coming to an end Thursday. It's our last show. I'm a bit in shock. But guess what? We have something new coming to replace Stir Crazy. It's going to be exciting. And it's going to premiere Tuesday, October 13th, the day after Indigenous Peoples Day. I'll give you a hint. It's called Burn It Down with Kim Brown. There's a hint. It's going to be similar to this, y'all, but we are going to have a real good time. But seriously, it's about reimagining a new society. We have to somehow deconstruct and get rid of, dismantle all these systems of oppression. Trust me, I am a Black woman. I feel all the oppression. Can someone please come take the oppression off me? Well, we're going to have discussions about exactly how to do that in ways that we can reshape and reimagine our society because trust me, I know y'all don't want y'all kids growing up in this nonsense, in this Norman Rockwell hellscape that we are living in right now called the United States of America. We can't continue to live under capitalism. The planet is not going to survive under capitalism. So Burn It Down with Kim Brown is going to address all these things and more. And plus, at the same time, we are going to get these jokes off. Do you hear me? Because if we don't laugh at this, it's going to drive us crazy. So yeah, Burn It Down with Kim Brown premiering here on The Real News Tuesday, October 13th. Last Stir Crazy show this Thursday. So be sure to tune in and join us. Thank you all for watching. We appreciate it. See y'all later. Bye.